Ready.
Here we go. Ba-da-ba-ba-da-ba.
Looks like we're on. So
Oh,
good
hello.
morning. Good morning, Phil.
Good morning. Good morning, Kira.
It's been a couple weeks since we have been together.
It has been a couple weeks. It feels like it's been a very long time.
I was thinking about that. I was like, I feel like I don't know what's going on in your life anymore.
Who even are we, right?
I know.
And Betsy's with us and Leslie's with us. And I know Kathy Baggett's with us as well. Welcome, Leslie, Betsy, and Kathy, and anyone else who's with us or joining us. If you're joining us after the fact and you're just watching this, hey, welcome. Welcome. Anytime you're here, there's no wrong time to show up, just for the record. Kira, why don't we do the formal announcements of who we are?
Sure. Well, good morning. You are here with us on YouTube. Are you there, God? It's Kira and Phil, and I happen to be Kira. I am the priest in charge of St. Anne's Episcopal Church in Nashville, Tennessee.
Awesome. And I am Philip DeVaul, and I am rector of a church called Redeemer in Cincinnati, Ohio, the Queen City. So welcome, Kira. Welcome back. We took the week of Easter off.
Yeah.
We didn't take Holy Week off, which might have made sense.
Yeah, we may have flipped. We could have flipped that maybe, but
we had a lot to talk about. We had to talk about the prayer of humble access.
Yeah, and we had to talk about why we do or don't when we
like it.
Alleluia.
Right. Alleluias and prayers of humble access. Here's the deal. Like, it's one of my favorite episodes we've done so far, just based on the sheer, look, this is super nerdy and it's just not for everybody. Sometimes we're really more we're talking about large scale subjects. And this time it was just really drilling down to the nerdiness of who we are.
Yeah. This one prayer and where it is in the liturgy and the each line of it.
Listen, this is what you get, this is why they pay us the medium bucks, but hey,
right. But I think that's to kind of riff on that. That's one of the beautiful things about the liturgy. You have these kind of big themes and stuff that come up. But there's such richness in a close reading of the various prayers and
I just think a lot about this time that I was in the vesting room of the first church I served after seminary. And we were, there's never a way to say this that doesn't sound scandalous, because we were taking our robes off.
Yeah.
But you don't want to say disrobing for obvious reasons. You don't want to say we were in the dressing room disrobing. That doesn't sound appropriate. But we were literally taking robes off of the bodies that had normal clothing underneath them, to be very, very clear. And a longtime server at the altar at this church, she said, it just hit me today.
And sorry, that's me.
No, I know, and it's okay. Server. The worst part about that is hearing my own voice by far.
Just wanted to make sure I had the comments.
And she said, right, exactly. And she said, I'm trying to think about, there's a line in, I don't think it was Rite One, although I love the language in Rite One, but it's in the Rite Two prayer of, it's the second prayer, post-communion prayer. Almighty God, Heavenly Father.
Yeah.
And in that prayer, we say at the end of it, we thank you, blah, 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 of assuring us that this is true. And then we say that we are living members of the body of your Son. And she said, she looks at me and she goes, that means that we're part of Jesus. We are part of Jesus' body. And I was like, yeah. And she gets these huge tears in her eyes and she goes, this is the first time I ever really heard that. And she was like, isn't that great? And I was like, yeah, it's amazing. And the reason that I wanted to bring in what you just said made me think of that, that the prayers and the words in our liturgy it's not just, yes, you can be nerdy about it. And we know people, but it's worth being nerdy about in the sense that this is rich language with a long history and a deep theological well from which it draws. I always say to people, your favorite song isn't your favorite song the first time you hear it. It's your favorite song the 1,000th time you hear it. And all of a sudden you go, boom, I guess that's my favorite song. And look at all these things. And yes, you can experience something special the first time, but it's the repeated coming back to it that makes it something different for you. And that's true for our prayers. And you can, when you open yourself up to them time and time again, these prayers open you up and change you and have the capacity to sit, like to rest inside of you in different ways. And so that's one of my favorite things about the way that we worship. We love to make fun of the way that Episcopalians are and the way that we worship and all sorts of stuff. But in reality, one of the things I truly love about us, right, is we just keep coming back to these things and saying them over and over again. And that gives us a chance to like live into them and like live into what, like, it changes how we believe.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's one of the reasons why, like, even though I grew up Episcopalian, that I'm still Episcopalian because of the richness of the liturgy, not just like the Sunday liturgy or not just morning prayer, but the liturgical year as well. Just kind of these themes that like keep getting repeated and keep getting repeated. And depending on what's going on in my life or what's going on in the world, like those always hit slightly differently. Like even though they're kind of the same, in my sermon on Sunday, I kind of described it like a kaleidoscope. Like it's all the same pieces.
Yeah.
But every time you turn it, you get kind of a different picture.
Yeah.
You get a kind of different combination of how those kind of things combine. The words of the liturgy, the themes of our faith, scripture, the Bible, and then kind of how they interact with like what is going on with us, like our spiritual lives, our personal lives, what's going on in our communities and the world. I really felt, I mean, I don't want to bright side anything about the pandemic, but just that like having such a large shift in kind of our daily life was really kind of opened up a lot of things about the scripture and God and stuff to me.
100%. I agree. No, I mean, this is one of those things where we don't want to seem flippant about the realities of the greatest public health crisis of the last century. But in the midst of it, we are Christians who see God's presence and recognize hope being sown in the midst of the sorrow and see God's blessing occurring in the midst of difficulty and chaos and despair. And the reality is, like, one of the things that's happened, I mean, like, my church staff, our team, is so much more closely knit than we were before this. We just are. So we don't go, oh, well, then it was all worth it. It's not about whether, like, that's not, so you're not being rosy. It's just like, we should be able to talk about what are the things that really, or what are the things that are really like, what has this crystallized for us? And what things have developed. I mean, my children have a completely different relationship than they did before the pandemic. You know, my daughter has now seen all the Marvel movies twice. I feel like, that's not, that's, I feel like a father of the year right now. I just think there's things like that where we can look at them and go, yeah, it's changed the way that we do church, the way we understand these things. And the whole, when people say get back to normal, if I'm in a good mood, I know what they mean, because I think they just mean we want to be able to hug and hold hands and see each other.
And like be able to take communion without being scared or go to the grocery store without freaking out. Like,
yes. But there's other parts when they say going back to normal where I'm like, never happening. And that's the spirit, and it's good. So, by the way, have you ever heard of a sumo citrus?
No, I don't think so.
Does that look attractive to you? You weren't ready. You were, friends, I did not prepare her for this.
You did not. Where'd you get that, Phil?
Oh, I got this at the Kroger.
Okay.
I shop local.
Yeah.
Kroger's Cincinnati based, so I shop local. Okay, so it's ugly. It's very easily peelable. I'm not going to do that because I'm going to save it for later. You know what clementines are, right? Sometimes they're called cuties. This is literally a giant clementine. That's what they are.
Okay.
They're like, if you like, it's crazy easy to peel and it tastes just like a clementine, but it's the size of a big orange. If you got rid of that part and didn't see that, it just looks like an orange.
Right. Yeah.
That's the thing that makes it terrifying. But
like growth on top of it.
It's really bad. But this thing is just like a really a sumo sized clementine. And I have to tell you, they're a little pricey.
Mm-hmm.
They're like $2 each instead of like 50 cents or whatever, right?
Okay.
But it's quite a treat. So, and 'tis the season. So I don't know if y'all have Kroger in Tennessee.
We do. We do.
Well, as a Cincinnatian, I beg you to head down to your local Kroger and see if they have any sumo citrus. Okay.
So Phil, it's Easter. So happy Easter.
Happy Easter to you too, Kira.
So I have a question for you.
Ooh, we didn't, by the way, friends, not rehearsed. I don't know what her questions are. She did not send them to me beforehand. It's like the GOEs. I'm ready.
Okay. So it's Easter, and Easter is, how long is Easter?
50 days?
50 days. That's a long time.
It's a long time to pretend to be happy about stuff.
Well, exactly. So my question for you is, how do you celebrate Easter? Like, how do you observe a season of feasting?
Ooh.
Especially one that's so long. Like, yeah, it's hard to it's easy to go all out for like a day, right?
So you'll appreciate this. A couple years ago, I bought this pink blazer and I wore it on Easter, and then I wore it every Sunday for Easter season.
Yes.
And people were like, oh, and they're like, you're still wearing it. And I was like, it was the perfect accoutrement, because people would be like, you're still wearing the pink jacket. And I was like, it's still Easter.
Yeah.
And they're like, so when will you be done wearing it? And I said, when Easter's over. Which was kind of stunning. Like, I'm pretty, that beautiful pink blazer doesn't currently fit my body. And I'm not going to go out and buy another pink blazer, but so it's been a little tough this year. And I haven't my whole I didn't do good at Lent in terms of like giving something up, because my whole attitude was like, I gave up hugging in Eucharist for Lent. So, what am I going to do for Easter? So but I feel very Eastery in terms of the fact that I'm like fully vaccinated. So I'm just going around and just kissing people willy-nilly. That's not true. Licking tables, whatever. Like you do, getting back to normal. But I do feel like the weather warmed up and I've been fully vaxxed, and I do have sort of a different energy around me, and we are saying Alleluia, and the readings are all sort of about what's possible in God. That's all really meaningful to me. But like, how do I celebrate it? I don't have a good answer. And I want to now I'm like, I really want to crush it next Easter.
Yeah. I feel like we all, and me too. That's why I kind of ask you this question. Like, we put a lot of energy into what are we going to give up for Lent, or what are we going to do for Lent?
Yeah.
What are we going to come out of Lent kind of learning or knowing, or I don't, I do this every time, at the beginning of Lent, I'm like, by the time Easter rolls around, I'm going to be super holy. And, I'm going to just have a totally different relationship. I'm going to be a totally different person.
Just the way God wanted me.
Right. Exactly. I'm going to be serious, and I'm going to have read, 50 theology books. And
have you ever watched my favorite stand-up comedy of the last 5 years, Tom Papa's You're Doing Great on Netflix?
It is my comfort food. I have to watch it every time I feel bad.
So the whole thing he does about how he hates makeover shows.
Yeah.
Take a woman who basically devotes her whole life to other people, and then be like, she's like, I thought I looked okay. No, you look terrible. And then at the end, they reveal her by putting her in clothes that she would never wear otherwise.
Yeah. It's you're going to be running around the soccer field and you're
right in pumps. But I love the line where they go, you look amazing. You look nothing like you.
Yeah.
And that's how I feel like we're supposed, Lent is like we get to Easter and we're supposed to be like, oh, finally, you're nothing like you were 40 days ago. You are finally lovable.
Yeah.
You've done it. You earned love.
But so we put all this energy into kind of our Lenten discipline, and then we don't really, then we get to Easter and we're like, well, okay, like we don't do a lot of deliberate feasting or deliberate,
right. No, I love this idea. Deliberate feasting.
Like our deliberate joy, or kind of like cultivating practices of joy and hope and resurrection.
Blowing my mind. I totally got this wrong a couple years ago, by the way. Do you want to hear what I did?
Yeah.
I was like, we always have all this really cool Lenten programming. We should have really cool Easter programming. Do you know what like fell like a tree in the forest and nobody heard it? was my Easter programming. I'm not sure it made a sound because people were like, no, we do this thing. We have a thing. Like I had this whole series planned out and I got like 6 people to join when I normally could get like 30 people to do something. Now you can sometimes create space for something like a confirmation class.
Right.
But I couldn't. And so I could do that sometimes, but it turns out like, remember, because our liturgical season actually also follows the like the kind of the school year, which is kind of how people, like, even people without children, people follow this in their heads. Mm-hmm. Summer still means a specific thing to people with no children, like, or with like no kids at home. Like, even if you're not affected personally by school schedule, we all still have it in our brains.
Yeah.
And our program year follows that. So by the time you get past Easter, it's a cool ride through Easter to Pentecost. And then once like Pentecost is over, Pentecost is over, you're like, let the Holy Spirit do her work. I'm going on vacation.
Yeah.
So I had all this like crazy awesome programming set for Easter a couple years back. And it was a ton of work. And I was really proud of the work, but it was a ton of work, a ton of prep work. And I limped into the summer. And like I had a Wednesday evening Easter program on how to read scriptures. I had a Sunday evening confirmation class, and I was doing my Bible study series on Thursday mornings on Revelation, which I already had a Thursday morning Bible study, but like I had it focused in a very particular way and in a text that people were really uncomfortable with. And then and on Sundays, all of the New Testament readings were from Revelation. So we did a sermon series. That was all Easter. And I was so psyched. They're all connected and all this stuff is happening. And like, and if you asked anybody at this church, hey, do you remember the really cool Easter series from a couple years ago? They'd be like, the what now? Not a person on this earth would remember that we did those things. And so I learned a lesson there. I learned a lesson there about that. But you are blowing my mind, because what if next year, 7 weeks of feasts? Like, what if we partied? Oh.
Yeah. Or like, I think when we think about, especially as clergy in churches, when we think about programming, we think about like offering things, Bible studies and classes and things where people can like learn and grow. And like, part of me is like, what if we just went on hikes, or like, what if we just, I don't know, took some time and like learned about like the birds or the flowers that are around our neighborhood, or, just a kind of like
right?
dwelling, like a kind of resting that isn't
like
so a focus. Like it's, yeah, like,
I don't know if you're listening and not watching, this isn't helpful, but if you're watching, like a
breath of,
like a little bit of a frolic.
That can feel like feasting for our kind of capitalist, productive, our worth is based on what we produce, like brains.
All right, Mother Marks, just settle down. No, but I know what you mean. Like in terms of like, even for the church, the things that we do are always geared towards how do we make people better and smarter and like tell people they need to read the Bible more. It's always low key that, right?
Yeah, like
We'll be
we want you to be
better,
a better Christian.
better Christians. And I was actually going to ask, I'm going to respond to Leslie's question. Before I do, I want to say to the group out there, to Betsy, to Leslie, to anyone else who's on the chat and hasn't piped up yet, like when you think of Easter as a season, like what would be exciting to you about that? Or like what, it is a season already, so we're not changing that. That's just a reality. But like, what could it look like? What could be fun? What could be a way to really enjoy it? Now, Leslie Martin's asking me a question that cuts to my very core. About being happy in Cincinnati. Have you experienced cicadas before? So the answer is yes and no. So Cincinnati has cicadas every summer.
Mm-hmm.
And I lived in North Carolina and Charlotte, North Carolina for a couple summers. They have cicadas as well. So I am aware of cicadas. My dog, we got him last summer. He likes to eat them. I like the way they sound. They are terrifying looking and absolutely harmless. Do you have them in Tennessee, Kira?
Oh yeah. And like a few, I'm trying to remember which year it was. It was
right.
Definitely not too long after I moved to Tennessee. So I want to say like 2014, 2015, somewhere around there, we had one of the big broods emerge. And I just remember there being cicadas just like everywhere. And like I remember like we were going to somebody's house for like a dinner party, like a barbecue or whatever, and we like were running from the car to the front door because there were just like cicadas everywhere. So I'm a little bit concerned about how this cicada business might affect like our outdoor worship.
So we're going to have 17, this is our 17-year big brood.
Yeah.
And I have read overall across the country, we're talking in the trillions of cicadas this summer. Now, Tennessee will get hit, Indiana, there are all kinds of places. When you look at any map that shows where the heaviest concentration is, Southwestern Ohio is about to get hammered.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm like, yeah, how do we do outdoor church?
Yeah.
Right? So that's why when Leslie asked the question, have I experienced them? My answer was yes and no. Yes, I know all about cicadas. Yes, I'm aware of them. Yes, I've experienced them. Yes, only one cicada can scare me. And I know, here's the thing about me. I know they can't hurt you. 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 They are terrifying. Anything big flying at my face is a no. A capital N, capital O, no.
I know. I mean, theologically, I'm like all of God's creation is good and beloved and wonderful. And then I'm like, no, cicadas are bad.
No, and also, no. And theologically, I'm like, we are literally in the middle of one plague and we're about to start another. I
did a kind of,
the Ohio River will turn to blood after this, by the way.
Yeah. Like I kind of did like a gonzo Easter vigil in my backyard with like a few friends this year, because we didn't have like an official Easter vigil. And like, yeah, those readings from Exodus really hit differently when we've had floods, tornadoes, like a pandemic, and now these cicadas, locusts. It's like, what is next?
None of them are, here's a spoiler, none of them are good.
I know.
There's no overabundance of sumo citrus. Like,
right,
that's not a thing. So yeah, we are going out of town for part of June while it's still maybe going on. So I'm hoping to miss the second part. My understanding, Kira, about the 17-year brood is that the first half is just, you can't walk out the door without something hitting you in the face, and they're everywhere, and the ground's moving, and like the sound is overwhelming. I know. This apparently the second part of it is just they are all dying and just rotting, and like you literally, because there's so many of them, you can smell it.
Oof.
And that's right when the heat kicks in, the humidity.
Yep.
Like what the hell, man? What the hell?
It's just so unpleasant because like you're like, oh, it's summer, we get to like go outside and like do things and like have people over and grill, and like we're all vaccinated now, and
Yep.
so we can do, hang out without like worrying about like
Yeah.
all this stuff. And then it's just like, boom, cicadas.
Yeah, we're going to be doing a lot of like finding the people who are everyone in the family is vaccinated, and then be like, we're going to be hanging out indoors for this trip because we finally can. So it's going to be AC and watching stuff on TV. That's what's going to be our relationship with each other. It's bad news. I'm not excited about it at all. I'm really not excited. And some people think I'm overreacting, and I know that I'm not. In my heart, I know that I am. If anything, I'm underreacting.
Yeah, I mean, you think you're in your head, like you do this thing where you're like, oh, okay, like it's going to be bad. And then you're like, oh, it's really bad.
Yeah. 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 So where is your God now? I guess is the question. Are you there, God? Because we've got some concerns. It's hard to understand why this is okay. And I don't know, who knows? Maybe it won't be so bad this year. Maybe global warming will have killed a bunch of them. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe, maybe there's a silver lining. There isn't, though. We're in trouble, deep trouble. Okay. So Easter season.
Yeah.
This year we're 3 weeks in. It is what it is, or 2 weeks.
I want to push back on that.
Okay, go ahead.
It's never too late.
Very good Episcopal language. Very good Episcopal language.
I think of that as like Vanderbilt Divinity School language.
It's basically what do you call it? It's that what do we call the kind of mainline denomination?
Sort of like progressive Christian.
Right.
Like, push back on that. It's never too late to start celebrating the season of Easter.
Say more about that.
Okay, well, like just because you haven't like started something yet, like in the same way that we do in Lent, we were like, oh, you could start a new practice. Like you don't have to start it on Ash Wednesday.
I like it.
You can, develop something. Or anyway, a lot of my Easter feasting practice revolves around like sparkling wine.
Right. So that's what I was gonna ask you. So how do you, is it like a weekly thing, a daily thing? Like how do you mark it? What are you doing for Easter?
I think for me, it's like, it's deliberate about kind of the things that I normally think of, like, no, I need to save that for something special. And then I'm like, it can be Tuesday. Like,
what's more special than the resurrection?
What's more special than the resurrection? And so, for me, that's maybe like champagne or sparkling wine that I'm like keeping for like a certain event or something. Also, I think like buying myself fresh flowers, like, again, not something that I kind of think of as like a treat.
Yeah. I like it.
And just kind of like going on walks and kind of like enjoying, like really taking stuff in, especially this time of year when like so much is flowering and beautiful, and just kind of like making an effort to really notice and enjoy those things. And
I like this idea of like doing something, being like, hey, it's Easter. Why not?
Yeah. I mean, like, I don't know. I'm not a China person in terms of plates and place settings and stuff. But I know a lot of people are, and certainly my parents and my grandparents and stuff were, and like they had these beautiful China collections that they used like maybe twice a year, like Thanksgiving if we hosted Thanksgiving, Christmas if we hosted Christmas, maybe Easter if we hosted Easter dinner. But like, I don't know, man, get a takeout cheeseburger and eat it on that fancy China. Like,
so I love this. I'd love to do Easter dinners every Sunday in Easter season. Oh, I love that idea. I like that a lot.
Yeah, I think I put a lot.
I'm such a corporate entity myself. Phil is. I'm such a corporate entity that I'm immediately like, yeah, I get that, but like, so how do I make this a church thing next year? And that's just how, like, it's so quickly where my mind goes. I'm like,
Yeah.
What's that thing I'm utterly obsessed with? My job. How do I incorporate that? And when you work for the church, it's like anytime God does something in your life, you immediately are like, this is beautiful. How do I translate this to my work?
Yeah.
Think about that, friends. Like, isn't that weird? Like, I don't know. I find that odd. Like, I mean, I guess probably everybody does it to some degree, but well, no. I mean, I have a friend like who's an engineer, right? And like he's an HVAC engineer, and like he's a brilliant mind. And I doubt that every time he has a theological revelation, he's immediately like, now how do I convert this to HVAC? Right? And he's good at his job and he likes it and he's brilliant and he's a good Christian. But like with us, like anytime we have this realization, I'm immediately like, all right, how do I make this a work thing?
Mm-hmm.
And part of that's because I like church.
Right.
But
Well, I think part of us is like we want to like share that. We want other people to have the same kind of revelation that we've had, or at least facilitate the possibility for that.
That's it. This Sunday, I'm having an Easter dinner at my house. I don't know who's coming. It'll be outside before the cicadas come. Easter dinner at my house.
Yeah, I mean, again, there are things that I kind of think of as like treats that I don't always want to do, or like deviled eggs, or stuff that it feels like it's kind of too time intensive or too something for like.
I'm doing a prime rib. I'm doing a rib roast.
Yeah.
That's what's happening. And I'm going to sous vide it. I'm going to get a big bag and I'm going to cook it for hours. For Jesus.
For Jesus. Yeah, because I don't know about you. What do you normally do like Easter, like the first Sunday of Easter for dinner or brunch, or like?
I don't know what I normally do. Oh, I've started to make big meals, which you'd think I'd be so exhausted after Sunday morning that I couldn't do that. Mm-hmm. But I'm like so high from being around people. And this past Easter, we like had Easter services outdoors, and it was by far the biggest gathering we've had in 13 months. Mm-hmm. So I was like crackling with energy. I was like, I could have powered the Vegas like strip. I was so like, I was crackling. Mm-hmm. And so I crashed later, but like I didn't stop moving from when I woke up before sunrise Sunday morning until around midnight or 1 Sunday night. Cause I was just, and it wasn't like, and it was easy. It wasn't hard. Yeah. I wasn't like, how do I do this?
Yeah.
And then I was just dead to the world for the next couple of days.
Yeah. Comatose on
Easter. Yeah. But that's how I am with, I mean, in general, normal Sundays, because of my energy, where I get it from and the level of energy I have anyway, if on a normal pre-pandemic Sunday, I'm like, I come off of Sundays just like kind of floating and like a ton of energy. And like, I know that I'm tired and I've been spent a little bit, but there's just this, like, I've been like peopled up. I always think about in those, like in Iron Man or something, when they're like,
charge.
Yeah. But like when it's charged, but like Thor hits him with the lightning and he gets up to 300% energy. You know what I mean? Like, like that's kind of me. I'm like, well, this is too much. This is too much. So we had, I had all the clergy from my church and from one other church. There's a priest. She's new to Cincinnati. She and her husband moved here during the pandemic and have not, made a lot of connections because it's during the pandemic.
Hard to meet people as adults in normal times.
Anyways, you've seen that meme that said no one ever talks about the miracle of Jesus having 12 close friends in his 30s.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing. He made them all then. Like he just showed up and was like, we're friends now. And they're like, we're friends now.
I know.
What? and people are like, water or wine is hard. Like, I feel like that's way harder.
I know.
But so I set up a banquet table in my backyard, tablecloth, all the fine china, our crate and barrel flatware, and wine glasses. And we had a big dinner and it was the biggest dinner we've had since this thing started. And it was all outside and distanced. And everyone at the table has been vaccinated. So there was a sense of like,
yeah.
Right. So we weren't fully distanced, like next to the person right next to us, but everybody knew when we were outdoors and we'd be vaccinated. So there was a sense of like, okay, like we can do this. We can have this meal and feel somewhat close to somebody in some way.
Mm-hmm.
It feels so odd to talk about it, right? But I did rack a lamb, and then everybody who came brought something, but it was all like, it was sort of like a gift to the clergy for like, y'all did a great job. Like,
Yeah.
this has been a time, and I wanted to sort of like invite them all over and be like, let's be together for this, because no one's been through it quite the way we have.
Mm-hmm.
They've been through it in their ways. That's great, but we have a very unique thing for us, and so we kind of shared that, and while eating cheese and drinking wine. I did make a special beverage for Easter. Do you know what my Easter cocktail was?
Ooh, what was it? Something bourbon based?
It wasn't. It was the first gin drink I've ever enjoyed.
Oh.
The Corpse Reviver #2.
Yes, that was part of my bachelorette party.
It's a stunningly good drink.
It is.
And it's called the Corpse Reviver, and it's on Easter.
It's appropriate.
I like when things are right on the nose.
Appropriate. Yes.
I don't like subtlety. I want my comedy. I want it to hit you in the face with a plank. That's what I want. So it was a lovely time. What did you do did you do anything for Easter?
Yeah. So my parents live close by. So a few years ago, I kind of said, look, I am not really in a place after Easter and Holy Week to like also plan a dinner.
Right.
But I will show up to something. So
right.
So I went down to their house. Fortunately / unfortunately, my husband had gotten his second vaccine on Saturday, like late afternoon, early evening, and it got to be Sunday at around we're needing to leave to go down to my parents' house, and he was like, I can't do it. Like, I'm too having too many side effects, just feeling too achy and under the weather. So he didn't end up coming down with us, which was a bummer, but like it's one Easter.
Yeah.
It was because he got his second vaccine. So like
exceptions are made.
Hard to be too upset about that.
Exceptions are made.
And one of my parents' friends came over. So there were 4 of us, and we did, drinks out on their deck and ham and deviled eggs and all that good stuff. So
I'd like to do some ham. I'm not a huge, I apologize for what I'm about to say. I'm embarrassed. I'm not a huge deviled eggs fan. I don't hate them.
A lot of people aren't, and it's okay.
But people who love them, like, love them. Like, if I was like, hey, Kira, before we eat dinner, would you like to eat 6 scrambled eggs? You'd be like, no. What is wrong with you? And then I'd be like, would you like to eat 12 deviled eggs? And you'd be like, yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. No, I know. Like, I think about that.
I wish they had more bacon.
I'm like, I just ate like 2 whole eggs.
Leslie's mad at me now. Listen, I want to be clear. I don't dislike them. I used to have a real aversion to yolk. Like, so I will eat them and be like, oh, that's good. But I don't crave them. And some people like crave them. Like, I can't, I'm done. I want to distract Leslie from her rage by going back to what she said here, which I think is fantastic. Saying we're friends now to someone is actually a really good way to make friends, because a lot of people are afraid people don't want to be their friends. And this cuts through that. Just declare your friends and invite them to hang out with you a lot. That's how I do it. I actually think this is a brilliant strategy. It does.
I feel like you did that to me, Phil.
I did. Well, but I had an in with you. Like, one of my closest friends is someone that I don't know if you guys are closest friends, but you're pretty close.
Yeah.
You care about each other. And she vouched for me. And like, so it made it a little easier. It was kind of like a blind friend date, like, and my wife was there and we had another friend there. And so it was like, there was like, but then we could have like never talked again after that.
Right.
And it would have been okay.
Well,
by the way, did you see what Leslie Martin just said? I don't think you've had my deviled eggs. Oh, listen, game on.
Bring them on.
Cincinnati, bring your boy some deviled eggs. Let's make it happen. Anyway, you were gonna say.
I think you also have this similar reaction when people are like, oh, hey, like, also my friend from seminary is going to be there. And you're like, great, another priest. And
Kira and I, if you'd think that because we're priests, if we find out you're a priest, that we're like more apt to like you. Au contraire. we're like, oh great, clergy. I'm like, yeah, I don't do super great. I don't do super great from that. Ooh, by the way, someone just now sent us a question.
Oh, I see it.
Dan Alcott.
Yes.
You know him?
Yes, I do.
How much avoiding of others out of frustration is unchristian? How much by the way, this just goes to show you that we answer questions people ask them. How much avoiding of others out of frustration is unchristian? I have an immediate response to this. Oh, by the way, Chris Tumulty's with us. Chris Tumulty used to do all the communication stuff in the Diocese of Los Angeles when we were both trapped. I mean, when we were both working there. And now he is, I believe, the communications guy for the Diocese of San Diego.
Oh, nice.
Working for the wonderful Right Reverend Susan Brown Snook. She's cool. And the Diocese of Los Angeles is a glorious, wonderful place that I'm so grateful for all the formation that it gave me. But he's in San Diego and I'm in Cincinnati, but we still love each other very much. And he's working there now. Chris, I'm so glad you're here. You should be joining in. Our friend Dan, you should be joining in more often, Chris. And I want you to start asking questions because I know you've got them. Okay. Dan asks, how much of avoiding others because of frustration is unchristian? What do you think, Kira?
I think it really depends a lot on the situation. Like, is this somebody, or, I'm thinking kind of like generally, like if it's somebody at church, I think a lot about how, part of our liturgy is the peace. Like we greet one another with the sign of peace before we go to the altar. And that doesn't mean that you like can't, be frustrated with them. I had a situation in my previous church where I had I had two parishioners who like hated each other, and it was a small church. And I finally had to sit down with them and with my senior warden and like kind of like talk. And it was funny because I was like 28 at the time and my senior warden was maybe like 35, and these two women were well into their 70s. And we had to like sit down and be like, you all need to behave.
Yeah.
Like you don't have to invite each other over for tea or like whatever, but like you can't do this thing at church, like where you're rolling your eyes at each other or being snarky or being difficult with each other.
The guy who was rector of this church, two people before me, came into a church that was heavily fractured over the exit of the previous rector at that point. So 3 rectors ago, but two. So there were this in particular. There was these two women that were like exactly what you just described. And one Sunday he just wouldn't give them communion. And
wow.
And then he like brought them together afterwards, and he's like, literally was like, y'all two work it out. You don't have to like each other. Like you just said, you don't have to like each other. You don't have to become best friends. But like, I'm not giving you communion if you're not in communion. You don't have to be buddies. You don't have to be pals, but you got to work this out. And he was telling the story to us in seminary. He was like, oh, it's so weird. The guy who used to be rector of this church 2 rectors ago, he led my class at seminary in a retreat. I didn't have the connection at the time. Didn't know about this place, all that stuff. So he was telling us these stories of this church he used to work at, and it was this church. And I didn't know all that. But hey, you're frozen on mine. Are you frozen on yours?
My Zoom is being a little bit weird.
Okay, but you're still there and you can hear us.
Okay, no, I'm here now.
Okay. So he goes, but you might be frozen I'm worried you're frozen on the video feed for people. I hope not.
Okay. Yeah, I'm kind of coming in and out a little bit.
Let's see here. Yeah, you're frozen, but you're here, but you're frozen, but you're here.
I am here.
Okay, but you're frozen. So, anyways, you might just be frozen for a little bit. I don't know if we want to like do a thing. But apparently he said, like, he literally was like, y'all need to work it out. Y'all need to work it out. And he said to us, look, they can hate me. They just united in their dislike of me, and that brought them back together, and that worked just fine. I was like, wow, that's amazing. I love it. Hey, Kira.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if you want to try leaving and coming back.
Yeah, let me try to do that.
And I'll just hold the line with my friends in the chat till you do.
Yeah, it's just kind of hanging.
All right. So she's going to leave and come
back.
Yeah, you'll be back. We got time. In the meantime, Chris Tumulty, let's talk about, like, you contributing to this more often, and maybe we'll get guests. Maybe we'll get your bishop on as a guest. We'll do Ask a Bishop on Ask a Priest. We could do that, right? Maybe I kick her off. What do y'all think? Can I just kick her off? Am I allowed to do that? Oh, nope. I don't want to do that because then I guess I can't bring her back. Oh, can't do that. Oh, well, we'll figure it out. Susan's listened? I feel like a stud right now. All right. That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. Oh, good. Let's see. Let's see if we get Kira back. This is exciting stuff. New technology. There she is. There she is, unfrozen, and I can hear your voice.
Oh, good.
You missed so much, Kira.
I'm sure.
It was riveting production. But at least we know you can do that now.
Yes.
So back to
what was your answer? Did you have an answer for Dan?
Oh, I waited until you got back.
Oh, okay.
So I think that so in seminary we were studying Dan, this is for you. This is no more, what do you call that? Where you change the subject. We're not getting off topic here. We're back to this, your thing. In seminary, I was doing a study of the book of Romans, and my teacher was talking about, we started to get into how Paul describes sin in Romans. And Paul says, and the way that he described it to me was understanding sin as a force rather than a moment. And then he said, so sin isn't about, in this macro idea, sin isn't about when you kick the dog. Sin is about the thing that makes you kick the dog. Right? So I am curious about what is the source of the frustration? And because here's the deal. There are times when avoiding someone is actually really necessary for your own well-being. There are times when you need to take a step away from folks so that you can breathe, so that you can work it out. So I would want to understand, and your frustration with them could be because, so here's an example, like if they've been mean to you or said something that was deeply insensitive. Now I would say our goal as Christians is for the two of you to get back into communion with one another. But that might require them making amends. That might require some work of repentance and on both your parts, or some conversation that would be difficult. And that should happen, but it needs to happen in a way where you're not further injured. Right? Yeah. So there's a thing in the 12 steps where they talk about making amends. One of the steps is to make amends to people that you've harmed, but it's like make amends when possible, when it wouldn't be harmful. Like if I did something to Kira that was really harmful, it might be something that I could make amends about. It might also be something that me coming back into her life and talking about it might do more harm than good. So I want to be careful. Like, I don't know your situation, and some pat answer of like, oh, well, you know what? You should never avoid people out of frustration. Well, what's that frustration coming from?
Yeah.
Here's a flip side of when it's not healthy, right? Here's a flip side. If I have someone who calls me out for my privilege as a cishet white male, and says something like, it's interesting that all the people who made it to the last couple rounds of being considered for rector of your church were all straight white males. I wonder what that's about. And points to the fact that had I been Kira, I might not have been considered for this. then I get uncomfortable and I get frustrated, right? Now, in that case, my avoiding you for bringing the person who calls that out might be a sign of cowardice on my part, might be a sign of my unwillingness to confront difficult truths. And in fact, one thing that we're finding out is a lot of the problems of our country have been exacerbated by people not willing to get uncomfortable. So by people in positions of privilege not willing to be uncomfortable or inconvenienced. Being afraid of their own frustration and thinking that if something frustrates me, I should get away from that. So I want to be careful because there are times when something frustrating me actually points to something I need to deal with and work on. And if you are the source of that frustration, or something you've said, I should say, frustrates me, and you frustrate me for being that sort of source, then that might actually mean I need to re-engage with you more fully, and my avoiding you might actually be profoundly unchristian. On the other hand, if my frustration with you is because you're consistently unkind towards me and consistently say negative things to me about my family or something about myself that I shouldn't be ashamed of, then maybe my avoiding you is what I need to do for the time being to sort of buck myself up and prepare myself. But I would say long-term, our goal is reconciliation among people, which of course requires both parties to participate in real ways of repentance and honesty. So that's sort of my like overly wrought answer. But I think does that make sense, Kira? Like in terms of what causes the frustration?
Oh, for sure. And I think one of the things that I keep hearing a lot from my congregation, who are mostly politically liberal, kinds of folks, is like, how do I stay in relationship with people who have very different political viewpoints than I do?
Right.
And there are times when I have said, like, maybe you don't, like if it's somebody who's very deep into like conspiracy theories, or somebody who is very like who you are even having trouble finding like similar like grounds of reality to kind of connect with, like there are times where you kind of might have to be like, you know what, I just can't engage with you on these topics. And like, maybe we can talk about our kids, or maybe we can talk about whatever is not sort of this thing.
Right.
And if they can't do that, then I think it's well within people's rights to be kind of like, you know what, I can't kind of have these conversations with you.
Yeah.
But it's another thing if like, hey, we have different viewpoints on like the best way to combat climate change, or like,
that I keep coming back to that. I'd like to be in a country where the political parties are arguing over the best way to combat climate change, the best way to end gun violence, the best way to end, systemic racism.
Yeah, or like, hey, we've got all these immigrants and refugees that are coming to our border. Like, what is like the most humane, best way of
right,
being the country that we've kind of said we are? And,
right, right. I totally agree.
Those are very different conversations, and I think and people can disagree on those sorts of things. There are people in, maybe my own family who I have different opinions about things than, and for the most part, we either just kind of steer clear of those topics.
Yeah.
And that just kind of is what it is. Because we love each other, and it's okay that we disagree, and we don't have to use every time that we're together to try and convince each other of like that our way is right.
Yeah.
Even though my way is right.
Like, obviously. No, and then you're talking about there's avoiding aspects of conversation, but then there's like avoiding a person.
Yeah.
Right, which is Dan is asking about avoiding a person.
Yeah.
I mean, but not that your thing is irrelevant.
Yeah.
They're connected, right? They're like it's how. So I guess I keep coming back to macro, big picture. We're all supposed to be together. short term, that's not always possible.
Mm-hmm.
And there are times when we need to avoid one another, frankly, for our own well-being and sometimes for other people's well-being. Sometimes my presence is harmful to other people, and I need to be aware of that. But what does it look like to always hold out hope, or to, like, what does it look like to think about, like, okay, with the knowledge that we're all going to be reconciled in the by and by,
Mm-hmm.
and that God is moving us towards that at all times in some way, because that's what God does, then what's my part in it here and now? And that could be it. And you just ask that question and then be honest with yourself. I mean, we don't, but I do think, it gets tricky, because like when I think about avoiding people out of frustration, I think sort of about like the movie, like Mean Girls,
Yeah.
or like some high school movie where someone's being ostracized.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't want to go down that route. We don't want to find ourselves. I will say the longer we withhold connection from ourselves from someone, the easier it is to dehumanize them.
Hmm.
And so that's something that I worry about myself, as I've got relationships where I've created boundaries with certain people for my own health and well-being, but it's hard for me to know how to think of them lovingly when I don't know, like, it's not easy.
Yeah.
It's a messy thing. So
I think one of the most challenging things to me about Christianity and about kind of our faith is that even the people that I just absolutely abhor their very existence are like beloved children of God.
right.
And it makes me really mad sometimes. I'm like,
That person
come on,
too.
really? Like that guy, that person?
Yeah.
Like, no way. But it's something that I definitely have to kind of remind myself of when I get really wrapped up kind of in my self-righteousness, or in kind of my pride, or in my, insistence that like my way is the best way, or how could this person be like so catastrophically wrong?
Right.
And it's like, well, maybe they are wrong, and like they're still a beloved child of God. Which again does not mean that I have to like be in close personal relationship with them at all times.
Right. It's a really good question. I dare say it's why we do this, so we can get answered questions like that. Dan, good work.
Yeah, thanks for submitting a question, Dan. Dan is a parishioner at St. Michael's in Cookeville, Tennessee, and is a kind of friend of friends of mine. In fact, actually, my best friend and her husband know Dan, and then Dan and I are kind of connected through Episcopal worlds.
Nice. It's a small world after all, getting smaller every year. That's cool though. That's really good. I'm really glad he joined the thing and jumped in. We're wrapping up here. Kira.
Yeah.
What you been listening to?
I went on a deep first aid kit dive yesterday.
Yes.
Sometimes I get into this place where I'm like, I don't know what I want to listen to.
Yep.
And then I was like, you know what I want to listen to? I want to listen to ladies singing.
Yes.
In harmony.
I'm finding myself there more and more, like as the years go by. Like I used to never listen to female singers when I was growing up.
Yeah.
Ever. Mm-hmm. And unless they were duetting with a man I already liked.
Yeah.
And now I'm like, yeah, I'm with you. Women harmonizing all day long. Huge.
And you had on our last show, you had kind of said, go find
first aid kit.
Some first aid kit.
Did you listen to their cover of America?
I did. Yes.
It's not bad at all.
No.
Yeah.
What have you been listening to?
I went on a really deep Simon and Garfunkel and Paul Simon, like deep, like had like came out the other end a different, like it's been pretty serious. And I have such a weird, tense love-hate relationship with them, the way they have a relationship with each other. Mm-hmm. Like Like I have the relationship they have with each other. That's the relationship I have with them, which they didn't ask for and they don't know exists. They don't know me, but that's the reality. So it's been a lot of that. Sadly, you're frozen again. But we're wrapping up, and you're frozen in a way that you look lovely. So you're not frozen with like your mouth wide open or anything crazy. So you're smiling, and we're gonna go with it. But you're still here. You can hear me and I can hear you.
Yes.
Okay, good. So we're going to wrap up with you listening to First Aid Kit, me listening to Simon and Garfunkel. And we'll always take your musical suggestions, friends. But we'll see you all next week. We'll be back. Send us questions. Thanks, Dan, for the question today. Thanks, Leslie, Betsy, and Chris and Kathy for the participation. And we will be looking forward to more of it all together next week. Kira, I look forward to hanging out with Frozen or Unfrozen you next week.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week. Same time, same channel.
All right. Sounds awesome.